Picture Hollywood in early 1943. The war raged overseas, but inside MGM's Culver City fortress, a different kind of battle was brewing. This was the golden age of the studio system, when powerful moguls owned their stars through ironclad 7-year contracts that controlled every aspect of their lives. Louis B. Mayer ruled MGM like a feudal kingdom, and his contract players were valuable property to be managed, marketed, and controlled absolutely. Tonight, we explore the moment when Hedy Lamarr, MGM's most beautiful woman in the world, was called merchandise to her face and dared to fight back. It's a story about beauty as currency, about intelligence dismissed as inconvenient, and about what happened when one woman refused to accept being treated as an object in Hollywood's golden cage. By early 1943, Hedy Lamarr had been under contract to MGM for 5 years, and those years had been simultaneously glorious and suffocating. Louis B. Mayer had discovered her in London in 1937, escaping from Fritz Mandl and her scandalous European past. He had renamed her, remade her image, and positioned her as the ultimate Hollywood goddess. She had starred in hit films, become one of the highest-paid actresses in the world, and achieved the kind of fame that most people could only dream about. From the outside, Hedy Lamarr had everything, but Mayer's control was absolute and dehumanizing. He decided which films she would make, which roles she would play, who she could be seen with publicly, even what she could say in interviews. When Hedy suggested she wanted to play more intelligent roles, characters with depth rather than just beautiful ornaments in male-driven stories, Mayer would smile paternally and remind her that audiences paid to see her beauty, not to watch her think. When she asked to choose her own projects, he would point to her contract, the legal document that gave MGM ownership of her professional life for 7 years. The tension had been building for months, particularly after the Navy's devastating rejection of her torpedo guidance invention in December 1942. That rejection had broken something inside Hedy, confirming her worst fear, that no matter what she accomplished with her mind, the world would only ever value her face. She had returned from Washington, D.C., crushed and disillusioned, and thrown herself back into the only thing Hollywood would allow her to do, look beautiful on camera. But the resentment was growing. Every day on set, being posed and photographed like a sculpture, being told to look gorgeous and don't think so hard, it shows on your face. Feeling the cameras capture her exterior while ignoring everything happening behind her eyes. It all felt increasingly unbearable. She was mourning her rejected invention, grieving for the contribution she could have made, angry at a world that refused to see past her beauty, and that anger needed somewhere to go. The confrontation that would change everything began on an ordinary February morning in 1943. Hedy had been called to Louis B. Mayer's office, a summons that always meant either a new film assignment or a lecture about some perceived misbehavior. She arrived wearing an elegant day suit, her hair and makeup perfect as always, playing the role of the compliant star, even as resentment simmered beneath the surface. Mayer's office was designed to intimidate. Massive mahogany desk, walls covered with framed photographs of MGM's star stable like hunting trophies, windows overlooking the studio lot that he ruled with absolute authority. Howard Strickling, the studio's publicity chief, was already there, holding a stack of photographs and publicity materials. Mayer sat behind his enormous desk like a king granting audience. "Hedy, darling, sit down," Mayer said, with the false warmth he used with his contract players. "We need to discuss your career trajectory." He had a way of making even simple conversations feel like business negotiations, which of course they were. To Mayer, everything and everyone was business. Strickling spread the photographs across Mayer's desk, glamorous shots of Hedy from recent films and publicity sessions. In every image, she was stunningly beautiful, perfectly posed, The embodiment of Hollywood sophistication. Mayer looked at the photos with obvious satisfaction, the way a merchant might admire valuable inventory. "Look at these," Mayer said, gesturing at the photographs. "Absolutely magnificent. You photograph better than any woman in Hollywood, maybe any woman in the world. The camera loves you, Hedy. Do you know how rare that is? How valuable?" His tone was appreciative, but oddly detached, as if he were discussing a particularly fine piece of art or a prize racehorse, rather than a human being sitting in front of him. Hedy felt something tighten in her chest, but said nothing yet. She had learned early that arguing with Mayer was dangerous, that studio heads could destroy careers with a phone call, that her contract gave her no real power in these conversations. But the anger from the Navy rejection, the frustration of 5 years being treated as beautiful property, was making silence increasingly difficult. "We're negotiating your next contract renewal," Mayer continued, leaning back in his leather chair with the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. "The terms will be extremely generous, more money, top billing, the best directors. But there are conditions, naturally. You'll commit to 8 pictures over the next 3 years, all roles selected by the studio. No outside projects, no unapproved public appearances. And absolutely no more of this inventing nonsense that I've been hearing about." The last comment landed like a slap. Hedy's eyes flashed with anger. "Inventing nonsense," she repeated quietly, her Austrian accent becoming more pronounced as emotion crept into her voice. "My patent was revolutionary. The National Inventors Council recognized that. Just because the Navy was too short-sighted." Mayer held up his hand, cutting her off with the casual authority of someone unused to being contradicted. "Hedy, sweetheart, let's be realistic. You're an actress, a beautiful, successful actress who makes this studio a fortune. That's your value, your purpose. This inventing hobby," he said the word with dismissive condescension, "it's a distraction from what you do best, which is look magnificent on screen." "It wasn't a hobby," Hedy said, her voice rising slightly, despite her efforts to stay calm. "I worked for months with George Antheil. We created genuine technology that could have saved lives. The patent office recognized its validity. I'm sure it's very clever," Mayer interrupted again, his tone now edged with impatience. "But it's not what we're paying you for. MGM invested heavily in building your image, your career. We brought you from Europe, cleaned up your scandalous reputation, made you respectable and bankable. You have responsibilities to this studio, to me, personally, and those responsibilities don't include playing scientist in your spare time." Strickling jumped in, trying to smooth the tension he could see building. "What Mr. Mayer means, Hedy, is that your brand is very carefully crafted. You're the beautiful, sophisticated European star. Audiences come to see you be glamorous and romantic, talking about torpedoes and radio frequencies. It confuses the image we've built. It makes you seem less feminine, less approachable." "Less marketable, you mean?" Hedy said coldly, understanding dawning with bitter clarity. "You're not concerned about my reputation or my femininity. You're worried that if people know I have a brain, they might not want to just stare at my face anymore." Mayer's expression hardened. The false warmth disappeared, replaced by the cold business calculation that was his true nature. "Let me be absolutely clear with you, Hedy. You are under contract to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. That contract gives us control over your professional image and activities. Your job, your only job, is to do what we tell you, look how we want you to look, and be grateful for the extraordinary opportunities we've given you." Then came the words that would echo in Hedy's mind for the rest of her life. Mayer leaned forward, his voice dropping to a tone of absolute certainty. "You need to understand something fundamental. To this studio, to me, you are merchandise. Beautiful, valuable merchandise, but merchandise nonetheless. We invested in you, we own you, and we will decide how you're used and marketed. Your opinions about what roles you should play, what projects you should pursue, they're irrelevant. Merchandise doesn't get opinions. The silence that followed was profound and dangerous. Hedy sat absolutely still, her face showing the shock of hearing stated explicitly what she had always suspected but never had confirmed so bluntly. She was not a person to Louis B. Mayer. She was inventory. A product, something to be bought, sold, used and discarded when it no longer generated profit. Something snapped inside her in that moment. The anger that had been building since the Navy rejection, the resentment of 5 years being posed and photographed like an object, the fury at being valued only for genetic accident rather than cultivated intelligence, it all crystallized into cold, clear rage. Merchandise, Hedy repeated slowly, her voice dangerously quiet. You believe you own me, that I'm something on a shelf to be sold. I don't believe it, Hedy. I know it. Your contract, Mayer began, reaching for the legal document that represented his power over her. My contract, Hedy interrupted, her Austrian accent cutting through his words like a knife, makes me an employee, not merchandise, not property, not a thing you own. She stood up, her posture transforming from compliant starlet to something harder and more dangerous. I am Hedy Lamarr. I escaped from a husband who tried to own me. I fled a country that wanted to murder me for my heritage. I created technology that the US Navy was too stupid to recognize. And I will not sit here and be called merchandise by you or anyone else. Mayer's face flushed with anger. He wasn't accustomed to defiance, especially not from actresses under contract. How dare you speak to me this way? Do you have any idea what I can do to your career? One phone call, and I can make sure you never work in this town again. You'll be back in Europe or worse, making low-budget pictures for Poverty Row Studios. Then make your phone call, Hedy said. And there was something almost exhilarating in the defiance, in finally saying what she had swallowed for 5 years. Because I would rather make terrible films for studios that treat me like a human being than make your precious hit movies while being told I'm merchandise. Strickling looked panicked, recognizing that this confrontation was spiraling beyond repair. Perhaps everyone should take a moment to calm down, he said quickly. Hedy, Mr. Mayer is under tremendous pressure. He meant exactly what he said. Hedy cut him off. He sees me as a thing he owns, a product he markets, and I'm telling him, telling all of you, that I am not for sale. Not anymore. You're already sold, Mayer shouted, his famous temper finally exploding. You signed the contract. You took the money. You wanted to be a star. And I made you a star. And now you think you can lecture me about respect? You ungrateful. Hedy's voice rose to match his. I made MGM millions of dollars. My films are hits. Audiences line up to see me. I fulfilled every obligation in that contract. But you're right about one thing. I wanted to be a star. I wanted fame and success and the American dream. What I didn't want was to be treated like livestock, to be told that my mind doesn't matter, that my only value is my face. The argument had reached a point of no return. Mayer stood behind his desk, his face red with fury at being challenged by someone he considered his property. Hedy stood across from him, shaking slightly but refusing to back down. Years of suppressed resentment finally given voice. Get out, Mayer said, his voice dangerously low. Get out of my office. And when you've calmed down and remembered who controls your career, you can come back and apologize. I won't apologize for refusing to be called merchandise, Hedy said. If you want an apology, you'll wait forever. Then you'll wait forever for your next good role, Mayer shot back. I'll assign you to every terrible script we have. You'll make B pictures and loan outs to studios that will work you like a dog. You think you can defy me and not face consequences? You'll learn exactly how powerful I am and how powerless you are. Hedy walked to the door, then turned back for one final statement. You know what's tragic, Mr. Mayer? You could have had an actress who contributed genuine innovations to this country's war effort. You could have had someone who made MGM proud for reasons beyond beauty. But you're too small-minded to see value in anything except box office receipts. You own my contract, but you don't own me. And someday, people will remember my mind, not just my face. That's something you can never take from me." She walked out, leaving Mayer standing behind his desk, furious, and perhaps for the first time, slightly uncertain. Strickling immediately began damage control calculations, how to spin this confrontation, how to manage the fallout, how to protect the studio's investment, even as the asset was openly rebelling. The consequences were swift and brutal. True to his threat, Meyer began assigning Hedy to increasingly poor projects. Films that should have gone to other actresses under contract suddenly became perfect for Hedy. Scripts that had been rejected by lesser stars were pushed on her with the clear message, comply or suffer. Her publicity was reduced. Her access to top directors and cinematographers was restricted. The MGM machinery that had built her career began systematically undermining it. But Hedy refused to apologize. She showed up for every assignment, fulfilled every contractual obligation. But the warmth and enthusiasm that had characterized her early years at MGM were gone. She performed professionally but coldly, giving exactly what her contract required, and not 1 ounce more. On set, crew members noticed the change. This wasn't the eager young actress grateful for Hollywood's opportunities. This was someone going through the motions, while her mind was elsewhere. The studio gossip mill churned with speculation. Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, Hollywood's most powerful columnists, both tried to get the story of what happened between Hedy and Meyer. Both found their inquiries blocked by Strickling's publicity machine. The official line was that Hedy was between projects while the studio found the perfect vehicle for her talents. The reality was a cold war between a powerful mogul and a defiant star. Irene Meyer Selznick, Louis B. Meyer's daughter, reached out to Hedy privately, trying to broker peace. Over lunch, at an out-of-the-way restaurant, she pleaded with Hedy to consider the practical realities. "My father is stubborn, and he holds grudges," Irene said, "but he's also practical. If you apologize, even superficially, he'll give you good roles again. Your career doesn't have to be destroyed over one argument." "It wasn't one argument," Hedy replied. "It was 5 years of being treated as an object culminating in being explicitly called merchandise. I won't apologize for having dignity, for refusing to accept that I'm just a thing to be used." "But you could have both," Irene argued. "You could apologize, get back in his good graces, and still maintain your self-respect privately. Nobody has to know you're compromising." "I would know," Hedy said simply. "And after everything, escaping Mandel, fleeing the Nazis, having my invention rejected, being dismissed at every turn, I have to draw a line somewhere. If I apologize for refusing to be called merchandise, what haven't I surrendered?" The standoff continued for months. Hedy's career suffered, but didn't completely collapse, because her star power was too valuable even for Meyer to completely waste. She continued making films, though rarely the prestige projects she had once been offered routinely. And slowly, something interesting happened. Other actresses under contract, watching Hedy's Defiance, began finding their own small ways to push back against studio control. The absolute power of the studio system began to show tiny cracks. Years later, after the studio system had collapsed, and contracts like Hedy's were considered relics of an abusive past, Louis B. Mayer never publicly acknowledged regretting how he treated his stars. But people close to him reported that he occasionally mentioned Hedy as the one who got away, not romantically, but as a valuable property he had mishandled through ego and controlling instinct. For Hedy, the merchandise confrontation became a defining moment in how she understood her own worth. Yes, she was beautiful. Yes, that beauty had given her opportunities, but she was also intelligent, creative, independent, qualities that mattered even when Hollywood refused to acknowledge them. Being called merchandise had been devastating, but refusing to accept that designation had been liberating. The incident revealed everything about how the studio system functioned. Stars as property, beauty as commodity, intelligence as threat. Hedy's refusal to accept being dehumanized didn't destroy the system or even significantly dent Louis B. Mayer's power. But it established something important, her own sense of self-worth that existed independent of Hollywood's valuation. She was not merchandise, she never had been, and no contract, no matter how ironclad, could make that true.